moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything else for old business?
I do indeed. There was a announcement that the Coakley Landfill Group has hired a lobbyist. I would, Mr. Welch has got forward brow.
Having a headache.
Could you? I will have a motion, but would you care to have a synopsis on that and its implications, please, sir?
I guess my comment is I can't believe it. The Coakley Landfill Group, as I understand it, is composed of 4 entities, and there are 3 people who represent those 4 entities. One person has 2 votes, and each of the other 2 people have 1 vote apiece. The major vote comes from the town council or the city solicitor for the city of Portsmouth. I find it hard to believe that the city that is trying to preserve its funding by doing prudent management through its officials within the town are hiring a lobbyist to see that the prudent management isn't done. I guess that's the way I look at it. And I think that's just so contradictory to what normally should happen in a municipal government that I'm afraid I don't understand it. It escapes me completely as to why this is being done. But it does seem to be like it's worse than a conflict of interest. I'm not sure if it's even in the feasance area, for that matter of fact. It's just something that shouldn't happen. The city of Portsmouth and the other towns that are involved should not be hiring a lobbyist to keep the state from enforcing the state and federal laws against their landfill. I don't see that.
I would agree with that, and I would say that Jeff McMenemy from Seacoast Online, that wonderful paper and that online platform, it states that Rathyoung and Pignatelli, there's a gentleman, Wallace stated that he will not be lobbying against any piece of legislation, Sullivan said. This is Bob Sullivan, who previously, and importantly, this board unanimously had sent a letter to, as the head of the CLG, the chief executive, if you will, that there was a conflict of interest. And then further on down in that article, asked if CLG's new lobbyists would end up lobbying against legislation at some point. Sullivan said, "I'm not able to predict that future." So Portsmouth, again, is taking the CLG funds, or the CLG rather is, and Mr. Sullivan is further quoted as saying it's impossible to say how much the lobbyists will be paid. So I think that's problematic. Again, on September 7th, this board had sent to the Portsmouth City Attorney, Mr. Sullivan, that we unanimously felt that there was a conflict of interest. He had sent back us a letter September 15th. A week later, he came before this board and gave us his presentation. In his letter, he states specifically, it is my role on the committee, that's the Coakley Landfill Group, if you will, to advance the interest of the city of Portsmouth in working on the Coakley Landfill Group. So by his own words, in his response to us, he is delineated his own conflict of interest. He talks about the sage advice offered by Larry Miller of the Northampton Select Board in this response as well. I'm not interested in Selectman Miller's sage advice. This is the town of Hampton. The town of Northampton, I believe, Mr. Welch, is a responsible party. Again, we've got an apparent conflict of interest. I totally disagree with the Mutual Admiration Society by people that are responsible parties, to include Mr. Miller and Mr. Sullivan, with their mutual admiration that they put in letters to each other in responses to us in the Coakley Landfill Group. I would leave it to the attorney for the town of Hampton to develop some courses of action to protect us with this latest development. As you know, I'm on the Cancer Cluster Commission. I do not speak as a rep on this issue. I am speaking as a selectman. We have a well that has been shut down. We are now talking about mixing water from that well. This summer, there was a representative, an employee of Aquarian Water, that came into this building and said he did not favor mixing water in blending water. And now that tune has changed subsequent to the stock transfer with Eversource. So now we're mixing carcinogens to lower the rate. We have the CLG hiring a lobbyist. Hampton has no course of action that we've delineated. So I know Mark is on vacation. And if he could, without a vote or a move, I think there would be general consent to have Mark develop some courses of action, specifically to send a letter to the Portsmouth City Council, to based on Mr. Miller, the selectman from Northampton, his what Mr. Sullivan self-righteously proclaims as sage advice about his performance, that we correspond with the town of Northampton selectmen, that we correspond with the city council in Portsmouth, and additionally, when we went through the Public Utilities Commissions, Chairman Hornenberg stated that if we have any concerns that are related to this PFC, PFOA, and other carcinogens, that we would have a direct recourse with the PUC, that he develop a course of action for some filings on behalf of Hampton to protect ourselves, to include the realization of the notion that why, if the Copley Landfill Group is paying a prominent law firm in Concord, why we will have to end up paying for testing through rates with Aquarian or now Eversource. And where is the equity for that in people in this town? Portsmouth, as you know, gorged themselves on the MBTE disbursement of funds. Hampton got nothing. They've lined up for that up into the Lamprey River, up in Madbury, into some of their statutory obligations to provide water for people that they had damaged their water supply in Portsmouth. So they're receiving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of funds. And they are masters of the universe when it comes to this. They do not have a well closed down. They do not have a water supply that's threatened. Northampton is in step with them, in lockstep with them, their Board of Selectmen and the CLG. And we need to protect our interests, and I think the town attorney needs to address those, provide some courses of action to protect us, and to provide us some courses of action to address, as Chairman Hornenberg did during our Public Utilities Commission hearings, that we have rights of redress directly with the PUC, and that we affect those, and that we send those downrange and have those our day in front of the commissioners. So that's what I would suggest going forward, Madam Chair.
So we need consensus from the board to have,
You do?
do we have consensus?
Sounds like we do. Thank you. We shall prepare that documentation.
Thank you for that. And secondly is we've put the town manager's contract